All right. So things are going a little interesting this week. It's been a huge cold snap. Arctic temperatures yesterday and this morning. Yesterday, so much more. Woke up, it was -8 on our way to church. Wind chill was almost -30. Today, right now, I believe it's only 7 degrees. Excuse me. And the wind chill is -1. So a little warmer, but hard for the car to start. I'm actually waiting for my wife. I'm here at the hospital in Taunton, and just waiting for her to get out and then go to work. But it is one of those days that you're just sitting there and a lot of time to think. And one of the things that's going on right now at our church has been the start of community groups. And like I've said, I'm the one who oversees the community groups. And yesterday, our pastor was talking about the growth stages of a Christian. Excuse me. And that's an interesting thing. A lot of people, I think it opened a lot of people's eyes up to what he was saying, because we look in the Bible. We want to believe that we are growing. We want to believe that we are maturing as Christians. And the truth of the matter is we end up in very much these areas that are like our own human growth stages. Infants, children, young adults, parents. We all begin spiritually dead, and that is actually one of the biggest things, I think, that a lot of people don't see. And that's why community groups are so important. That's why community groups are very, very much needed in every church. And what I mean is, we're able to sit there in community, have mature Christians that can sit down and go over scripture with us, whether they're at the community group or make time to meet for coffee or lunch on another day, and just kind of help each other through those trials and tribulations that we're going on. So, it just kind of, as my pastor was talking about that yesterday, it brought back a lot of memories of when my own parents were at a church in Brockton, where my dad was eventually installed as an associate pastor. But there were home Bible studies back then, and well, community groups are not really 100% all Bible study, at least how we've changed them today. The interesting thing is that when I look in my own life for the example of what I would like to see the community groups be like, I just have to look and remember what it was like with my parents and the DeGrasses and the Bullards and some of the other families that were involved in this one group, because I just remember going there and them just fellowshipping. Occasionally there might have been a dinner or a barbecue or something going on, and I remember like going out with the kids, some of their kids, playing out in the backyard, coming back in. Excuse me. Just a lot of that type of growth going on in community groups, and why that was and how that was, and it just speaks volumes to me about how a lot of churches have failed in their own type of growth as a community group, like their own growth, how they're just failing discipling people correctly. A lot of the churches that I see and know and have relationships with, the pastors and other people, other leaders of, that's what I hear about their groups, is that they're these small, tight-knit groups that have grown together, are living life together, and then being able to be welcoming to new people that come in to their groups. So it just really kind of gets into an interesting thing on how churches struggle to start community groups, start small groups, life groups, cell groups, whatever you want to call them. They've had a lot of names that I've heard in the almost 20 years that I've been a pastor or serving in different capacities in churches, and that's one of the things that really kind of needs to be helped within some of these groups, because everybody kind of tends to look at it as if these small groups are Bible studies, and they're not. That's the whole basis, especially in larger churches where these churches have a couple of hundred or a couple of thousand people. The small groups are where true community happens, and I know a lot of people don't like to think about that. In fact, sadly, what I've seen in churches has been almost kind of a how would I put it? Almost kind of a sabotage, if you will, where people are not comfortable with the idea that comfortable with the idea that if their church is growing through the cell groups, that then they are going to see a larger number of people come in. And the thing that really disturbs me, makes me sad, really bothers my spirit, is that those are the churches that then you have to wonder if they understand the Great Commission about going out and making disciples. And that is a huge problem for me, because if we're to make disciples, then churches are going to grow. Just look at the book of Acts. When we read the book of Acts and we see Peter give the first sermon, we also see that 3,000 joined the church that day. 3,000 joined the church that day. And then you follow along and you'll see where it keeps telling us how many were added to the church. And you get to a point where it's almost like, I think my own personal figures, it gets close to about maybe 8, 9, 10,000 people are in the church in Jerusalem. And the one thing that we read in Acts 2, 42 through 47, I believe it is that they devoted themselves to the preaching of the preaching and teaching of the apostles, and that they were in each other's homes, they were breaking bread and having meals together. And that's where a lot of people over the last couple of decades have kind of been focusing on what small groups should look like, what community groups should look like. And so we get into these situations, we get into these debates, if you will, sadly, about churches growing. And so, if you're going to do community groups, if you're going to have community groups, you need to have that expectation that your church is going to grow. One thing we do at Meeting House is within our community groups, we include the empty chair. And the empty chair principle is, excuse me, the empty chair principle is that one chair is to represent that family member, that friend, that coworker that needs to get into a relationship with Jesus. And we need to be praying for that person. And so, just the other day, we had a new couple who are coming into our community group, and they were asking that question. And so I was explaining it to them. I was like, okay, so this is what the empty chair is, and I was pointing out how it was different people for different people in that group. For one woman, it's her son. For me, it's a guy that I used to work with and had become our neighbor, and has been a good friend for the last 15 years. And so it's that type of stuff that we want to see in our community groups, how we want people to come in. And so you might do different things. You might have a day where you have a cookout in your community group that isn't going to lead to any kind of study or discussion, but you can invite those friends there and have them in a non-threatening situation. Like I've seen one person come into our group that was invited and not in a non-threatening situation, and basically turned around and said, wow, I can't believe all those people were Christians. They were like normal people. We have this, sad to say, reputation that Christians are uptight and can't have fun, and it's just something that we need to work on. It's something we need to change. So that's just one of the things that we need to be working on in the body, to help people kind of see that we're going to have to change how we do life, how we do different things that we've grown up, for many people, they've been doing the same things in churches for 10, 20, 30, 40, even 50 years. And they wonder why no one's coming to church when they invite them, why no one is there, why, just why it's so hard to get that person to come to church. And the thing is they have had this predisposed notion that the world has given them about church, and to some degree we've added to that. And what we have to do is we have to show, like, that's the one thing that happens is, you read about Matthew or Cornelius when they found Christ, when they were introduced to the Savior, they invited people. They had a party, and they had just something there to kind of bring people in. And that's what we need to do. That's one thing we need to focus on, is what are the things that we can do, the subtle changes we can make to help people change their ideas and their perspectives on us, on Christians. So, yeah, those are the things we need to do. We need to try to be active in changing how people are going to look at us, receive us, be us. And that's going to be the interesting thing, I think, that is going to happen over the next, few years, not just in my church, but in other churches. So that's going to be the big thing, I think, over the next few years. How churches are going to be struggling to grow, get back people in their buildings. What I hate to say this in a way, because it sounds like I'm being a downer, but I think one of the big things is going to be returning to old ways, making them new, as well as doing away with a lot of things. Okay, so that got cut. But what I was trying to say is taking a lot of these things that we've kind of built up and made traditions of that aren't working, things like ham and bean suppers. Those are popular here in New England. Some, I don't know, just some of that stuff that is just kind of not drawing in, like, it brings in your friends that are going to another church, and not bringing in your friends that haven't even stepped foot in a church. That's what's going to need to be changed. That's what I mean by getting rid of the old stuff that isn't working and rediscovering some of the stuff, some of the old stuff new. And I think community groups really are becoming that now. They're starting to become these new incubators of growth. And I know growth for a lot of people becomes a bad word, but seriously, if you want to see spiritual growth and if you want to see your church grow, you need to start community groups, and you need to understand community groups. And I'll say that a good book out there is by Nelson Searcy, Activate. That's a great book. Another one is a group, I think it's called Community. I forget who wrote it, but used to be part of the Resurgence Network books. But of course, I'm not near my bookcase to tell you who wrote it, but that is another good book. So anyway, if you like what I had to say, I'd appreciate a like and a subscribe, and we'll see you again later. Bye.